it. I'm going to be asking you the first question, and then we can just go along. Huh?
Okay.
So welcome. Really happy to have you with us today. You recently published a book on digital supply network. So what is the difference between yesterday supply network and tomorrow digital supply network?
Well, that is a fantastic question to get us started. So we can think about the traditional supply network in terms of the score model. I think the score model is very familiar to a lot of people in the field. So we have this buy, make, and move. So the model captures the idea of the traditional supply chain, which would be this sequential, linear flow of information and decisions and activities. As we move to a digital supply network, the mindset is very different. So the mindset starts being one of collaboration, of a real-time integration. So a digital supply network really is a set of interconnected capabilities enabled digitally to allow us to do things very differently than what we have been used to do before. So it's a movement from this more linear mindset to a mindset where everything is interconnected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very clear. Thanks a lot. Could you provide us some example of what companies are doing in terms of implementing these digital supply network?
Yeah, I can provide a couple of them. So the first one is one that I like very much because it combines a lot of these technologies. And for me and for I think digital transformation is really about leveraging these technologies to do things very different. And I like this example a lot because of that. So there was a proof of concept a few months back where an aircraft took off from New Zealand, and midair, they identified a problem on a first class seat. So that is very costly to bring an aircraft back with that seat empty. So the crew communicated that problem to the ground on the way to LAX in the US. In the ground, the crew contacted a supplier in Singapore. This supplier moved or sent the digital inventory to California, arriving there to another supplier that used 3D printing to print that part. So when the aircraft landed in the LAX, the part was already there, ready to put in the aircraft, and without any additional time, the aircraft had the problem fixed and came back with the seat available. So it's a combination of cloud with blockchain, with 3D printing, and so some of these new disruptive technologies, and show us that we can do things very differently. So we're talking about digital inventory. It's just a global supply chain. We have a carrier in one country, a supplier in a very different country. The 3D printing happening in yet a different country. So I think this is a nice example. Now there are other examples. Alibaba, for instance, they have this Sanxi factory, which has they have digitized completely, and they leverage the AI to help small and medium-sized companies to predict what they're going to need in the fashion industry, garment and fashion industry, which is a very complex supply chain, and you typically have to make decisions 6, sometimes 7 months ahead of time. And they have shrunk that, allowing small and medium-sized companies to make these decisions in a much shorter span of time. And the factory is completely flexible because of the digital. So it's a combination of a digital factory with this AI-powered analytics that allows the Sanxi factory to help their customers to forecast more precisely what will be needed, and allows also the small, typically small and medium-sized companies. They have some contact, very close contact with their customers. So it allows that information to be brought into the mix to help them make decisions. So there are many other examples. So I'll keep it these two, but you can go on.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. Thanks a lot for that. I think, the first one is very much about the, let's say, the after sales, when the plane is already like operating. The other one was very much about manufacturing and how you bring the consumer data to some factories. Do you have any examples? Maybe it could be useful to look at some of the design activities.
Well, there are a couple of them, and there is one particularly that I like because it's an area that is of great interest to myself, and I have some background in that area. So it's something happening here in the US with the US Air Force, actually. But it started with a partnership between Boeing and Saab when they developed this project, the T-7 Red Hawk, which is a trainer jet for the Air Force. And this aircraft was fully, the development was fully digitized. So they used the digital threading. In other words, the designers, they created a digital twin. It's a very strong, very used term in digital transformation. So they used the digital twin for the jet. And what happened is, it allows you to have all these different parts and components being developed simultaneously. And if you make one change in one system, so it's basically an ecosystem of partners developing this aircraft, right? So you have the major partners, but you have other suppliers in the mix as well. So as you make changes in one part of the system, an AI-based resolution helps you make sure that that change is compatible with the rest of the system. And it allows you to develop the aircraft much faster at a much more cost-effective, it's a much more cost-effective strategy. And it allows you also to, so when you buy, the other interesting thing is that the government, mainly the military, they typically have to fly the platform before they commit to purchase a unit. And in this case, you were able to actually see everything about the platform before the first unit for the test platform was built. So it's, again, another, I think, good example of these transformations that are going on, and entirely based on this digital thread. Again, the digital thread allows all these different partners in the ecosystem to interact, participate real time, and have whatever one does, the others can, the system helps to make sure that the others are, there is compatibility between all the ecosystem with what the partners in the ecosystem are doing. So I think I enjoy this example a lot. There are other examples. I think BMW, it's not necessarily one of development, but they created this venture platform where they bring in different partners to help them to innovate, which is something similar to what the Air Force is doing, or the other way around. And it's based on this internal platform where all these different units across the globe can see and can participate and bring in innovation. So those are two examples that come to mind. We have more, as I said, we have several very interesting things happening in this arena.
So that's really interesting, because we tend to see the world as this chain of events and flows between one company to another. But what you describe here is below the supply chain, there's a data or a digital infrastructure that's going to be evolving in real time. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a whole digital stack under the surface. And on the bottom line is really data is powering the whole thing. So we talk about digital transformation, and one of the important takeaways of this is that we're not talking about just implementing or deploying technology, but we're leveraging the technology to do things differently. And the way that we leverage this technology is really to think about how we can leverage the data that the technology affords us, the visibility that these technologies allow us. So yeah, so there is a whole digital stack under the hood or under the surface. and they have to we have to coordinate them very carefully, and also this allows us to have this ecosystem of partners coming together, and there will be different ecosystems interacting, and the digital stack is extremely important. How we reconcile, how we assemble them, and the capabilities, of course, that we have to focus on to bring all these different partners in the ecosystem together.
And, we've gone through this epidemic, COVID-19. How is this impacting these evolutions?
Oh, it has accelerated. So we have, there have been a lot of trends already happening in terms of global supply chain, in terms of digitization. A lot of companies, the leaders in different segments, they were already digitizing. But the focus was a little more on the efficiency, on optimization. After the pandemic, or during the pandemic, we came across the reality that, well, you know what, is not just about technology, it's really about data, and it's not about efficiency. We really have to have visibility. We have to have the ability to see what is happening. So we saw a lot of companies struggling because they did not know what was happening in different units, or they did not know which supplier had been affected and how, and so on and so forth. So there was this lack of visibility. And so essentially the pandemic has brought those issues to the forefront and has accelerated digital transformation. So I think we will have companies have been investing more, even during the pandemic, with a lot of uncertainty. And the focus has changed slightly towards this more visibility rather than just efficiency.
Thank you. Any final advice you would give to, procurement professionals in order to prepare for this future?
Well, the first thing is really to be aware of all these different technologies, their capabilities, their limitations, because it's happening. It doesn't. We don't. There is no way back. We have to understand how these technologies will affect us, and then leverage them. You start thinking about how these technologies can help us, help our companies, help our functions work differently, work better. What kind of value can these technologies bring to our companies? And again, it's not about employing technology. It's about leveraging them to create value.